An airplane has hit the World Trade Center, and that's all we know.
Today, we've had a national tragedy.
American Airlines Flight 11 departed Boston for Los Angeles.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center.
World Trade Center has been one of their missions.
And we heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, people were jumping out the window.
And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. May God bless the victims, their families, and America.
On September 11, 2001, 4 airplanes were hijacked by members of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. One plane was flown into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. at 9:43 a.m. Another was flown into a field in Pennsylvania at 10:10 a.m. The passengers on that flight were able to overtake the terrorists after hearing about what had happened in New York. Their plane was en route to Washington. Presumably, it was on its way to crash either the Capitol or the White House before passengers stopped them. Unfortunately, the other 2 planes that were hijacked were flown directly into the Twin Towers in New York City. The first plane flew into the North Tower at about 8:45 a.m. Shortly after, at about 9:03 a.m., a second plane flew into the South Tower. About an hour later, at 10:05 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, sending debris into the air and collapsing inward. Shortly after, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed inwardly, sending debris flying into the air. This took about 3,000 lives. The city of New York was shut down completely.
We're all very young when 9/11 happened, so we don't remember the reactions of our family on that day. What we do remember is how people react to the anniversary for it each year.
At school, we have a moment of silence, and there have been memorials for it around Reddit on the news. As kids with little knowledge of the events, it wasn't very important to us.
We didn't begin to understand what actually happened on that tragic day and what that meant until the 10-year anniversary, September 11, 2011. There seemed to be a heavier weight on that day, and as long as 10 years is, in the grand scheme of things, that's barely any time at all.
As much as time can heal, there is still an apparent scar on those affected and the rest of the nation today, even as we move forward from what has happened.
We were not aware of what happened that very day, but the impact of what happened has shaped the way America now deals with security, which is certainly something that anybody living after 9/11 must face.
Where were you and when was it that you first heard about 9/11?
I was at Ohio University. I was a sophomore, and I was going to my English class. And my professor canceled the class and told us to go home or back to our dorm. And I was really confused. That's all I really remember.
How did you hear about what had happened?
So I heard about it, like people were talking from that class that was canceled. And then everyone was like, so this was before smartphones. Everyone was like, oh, go back, to your dorm or your apartment and like turn on the news. And I was really young and I had never been to New York, so it was kind of like, I remember they played the same clip like over and over again of like this plane and like the towers falling, or I don't even know if I saw the plane or not, but it just seemed really surreal. I was kind of like in shock.
What was your immediate reaction? Did you think it was an accident?
I don't think I really knew what to think. Yeah, it seemed like an accident. It was just confusing. I don't know.
Do you think it was a good idea to build the Freedom Tower?
I think it's a good idea to remember people and to honor people who died. I think the concept of calling it a Freedom Tower is ironic, to be nice. That's the nicest way I can put it. It's ironic. And I think it's insulting to the American people, but okay, yeah, it's nice to remember those who died.
Do you feel safe from terrorist attacks?
No. But I fear my own government more than I do like external terrorist attacks.
President Barack Obama states, "This is a core principle of my presidency. If you threaten America, you will find no safe haven." Does this make you feel safer?
No, I don't feel safer. I feel like they're using that to create more of a police state. And they've done this through the TSA and spying on us and reading our emails. And no, actually I feel less free.
The preamble of the U.S. Constitution states, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." Do you think the aftermath of 9/11 has helped America in a positive way? Does the U.S. have a more perfect union?
No, I don't. I think we're getting farther away from the Constitution and personal liberties. So I think we need to be questioning that, and taking the Constitution back Like I mentioned, like a police state is like the opposite of the Constitution, and they're using 9/11, which was a tragedy, I'm not trying to belittle that, but they're using what happened in a negative way. That's just my opinion.
After watching Rebirth, a movie about 9/11's affected friends and family, we think tragedy is very difficult to recover from. Do you think America can ever recover from this disaster?
Yeah, I mean, I think time heals things. Then again, I didn't lose someone. Like when you lose somebody, because I have lost my parents, so when you lose somebody, it never really heals fully. Like there's always going to be a scar there. But I think it can get better. It takes time. Yeah.
Rebirth is a saddening yet enlightening film that follows 5 people who were differently affected by the tragedy of 9/11 over the course of 10 years. The director, James Whitaker, does a sublime job of exemplifying the true pain and horror of that day through the documenting of the struggles of these 5 people. Tim lost his best friend Terry on September 11th. They were firefighters together. In one story, Tim reveals that in the midst of smoke and fire and horror, Terry was yelling words of encouragement. That story shows the kind of person Terry was. Today, Tim is training first responders. He is learning new details about 9/11 that he didn't know before. Like another one of his fellow firefighters, when hearing about Terry and others being stuck up in the building, said, "I'm going up." Tim struggles with survivor's guilt, hearing about such stories and knowing that he couldn't have helped them in the way he wished he could have.
Brian lost his brother Michael. Michael was a firefighter who went up into the towers to help and possibly save victims of the attack, but he didn't survive. Brian was diagnosed with PTSD soon after the attack, which was curable. We see in his later years how he learned to move on from feeling constantly guilty, angry, and depressed about that day. Today, Brian remembers his brother by wearing his brother's firefighting coat while working on the construction of the Freedom Tower. Ling was working in one of the towers when the plane hit. She survived the attacks but was left suffering with severe burns. Over the years, we learned that she must deal with many surgeries and the incapability of doing things she used to love. She states at one point that she feels useless. In the earlier years following the attack, she is sad and bitter towards what has happened. By the end of the film, her gratitude is apparent as she acknowledges the fact that she's alive and her burns could have been a lot worse than they were. She decides to stop having surgeries, saying with a laugh that if she has to deal with them later in life, that's fine because by then she'll be 60.
Nick lost his beloved mother. The trauma of losing such an important person truly made him distraught. His family fell apart as his father quickly remarried, giving Nick so little time to heal. His father kicked him out of the house, leaving Nick all alone. He received many donations from losing his mother, but he couldn't even bring himself to use it. He just saw it as bloody money. He often longs about being with his mom. He would often watch old videos of when she was alive and life was so simple and happy. He even works on Wall Street for a few years because that's where his mother worked, but by the end of the 10 years, he acknowledges that he isn't his mother. He soon rebuilds his relationship with his father, who tells him that he was wrong to not allow Nick and his brother to heal after what happened. Tanya loses her fiancé, Sergio, on 9/11, but didn't get the devastating news until 1 month later. People often went to her house offering food, but she would always ask why. Tanya was in denial for a long time. It took her a long time to realize that Sergio was gone, and she couldn't move on thinking that she could only love Sergio. She eventually marries another man that she loves, but never forgets about Sergio. Every September 11th, she goes into the city to remember him and how brave he was that day. Tanya names her first child after Sergio in order to honor his bravery.
How did you find out about the attacks of 9/11?
I had the TV on, and I said, no, I did not. He said, well, put it on right away, Mom, because something big is happening. He said, there's a plane just gone into one of the towers in New York. And so I said, okay, I'm going to turn it on right now, and I'll talk to you later. So I turned it on, and I watched it as the first plane had hit the first tower. And I was really just astonished and couldn't believe what was happening. And then shortly thereafter, there were all these screams and voices and everything saying they're going after hitting the second tower. And I was, again, just so dismayed and didn't know what to think. I thought first about my niece Karen, who was an airline stewardess at the time, and I knew that she had left Logan that morning and was flying out somewhere, but I didn't know where. But anyway, I watched it all morning while the TV just kept showing all these terrible scenes of we actually saw the buildings crumbling in front of our eyes, and it was just this. The fact that you could see things happening immediately is just unbelievable and astonishing. And you could see the buildings go right down to the ground. You actually could see some people jumping out of windows, which they did because the stairway was blocked, they couldn't get down. And then you could see the people on the streets, and you could see this cloud of ash all around and people trying to get through it. And so it was utter chaos, just utter chaos. I sat glued to that TV set practically the whole day. And shortly thereafter, they spoke about the plane that was headed for the Capitol, but crashed in the meantime because a couple of the passengers took over and subdued, apparently, the people that were causing this to happen. So that was averted, but it also crashed and everybody in that plane went down. So it was a day that I think we realized that somehow or other we didn't know who was responsible, but we kind of felt that life was never ever going to be the same after that because we knew it was a foreign body. It certainly weren't Americans that were destroying the Twin Towers.
What do you remember about the response of the people in the U.S.?
Well, the response of the people, I think, was just bewilderment and astonishment at first that anything could happen, that anything like that could happen in the United States, and particularly in places like New York and Washington. I mean, they were just, I think, as I said before, I think we had such wonderful lives without a whole lot of turmoil and strife and deprivation. The people in countries where wars had been going on, we never knew any of that. So we were now faced with a horrible situation. The number of people who died on 9/11 was astonishing. And almost everybody, if you went those 6 degrees of separation, almost everybody could relate to somebody that was caught either in the Twin Towers or in the plane that was shooting into Washington. So I think it was just almost, how could this have happened attitude.
In President Bush's 9/11 speech, he said, "None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world." What are your thoughts on this quote?
Well, I think he expressed the feelings of most Americans that day, that, we would go to any extreme to protect what we have. And that's what America is all about. I mean, they're not just going to sit by after that and let all our freedoms be taken away. And they do whatever they needed to do to protect them.
How do you feel about 9/11 now?
I think that our lives have never been the same since 9/11. I think the innocence that we had is gone. I think we're a lot more fearful of everything. I think we don't allow our children the freedom they had before. I think we're extremely cautious about where we go and when we go and how we go. And I just think that life has been totally changed since 9/11.
9/11 is one of those things that goes down in history. These are the things that are so important to study. We study history to learn about the past generations. We want to have the most knowledge about the people before us. Will Shortz has said, "As humans, we have a natural compulsion to fill empty spaces." This speaks in regards to the idea that humans use history similarly in the way we use science, to try and answer questions that may never be answered. Specifically, there is still so much we don't know about ancient civilizations, yet we spend so much time studying them today. It's important to gather as much as we can about the past in order to know more about how we've gotten to where we are in the present. This idea speaks to something Adolf von Harnack has said, which is, We study history in order to intervene in the course of history. We study history because the people before us can influence who we are tomorrow. These past generations can motivate us to be the best we can be and to make a big difference in the world. Can you make this world a better place?